Hi everyone, and welcome back to my vlog for Films About Painting Spring 2020. And today I will be talking about the film Painter's Painting, and I will be answering the question. The introduction of Painter's Painting explains American painting's issue with subject matter. Translate this into St. Xavier University speak and use examples from the intro. So this intro primarily talks about what is American art and what actually makes it American, given that the idea of North America and that United States was founded on the genocide of Native American people. What makes this art American, especially when a lot of these American painters that we know the most are white people, and they are most likely from somewhere in Europe. You know, they probably have roots from over there. So it's kind of frustrating to pin down what American art is and how America is an idea. At the same time, it's an abstract idea, realistically, if you think about it, because a lot of people would have something to say about what they define America to be if you talk to an indigenous person versus someone whose like great grandparents were some of the first colonial settlers. So there's a lot to do with that here, and let's just jump right in. So something from the introduction of Painter's Painting that really stood out to me, and I think helps to translate what the speaker is trying to say, which is basically that, as I already stated, what exactly is American art that makes it American. He says that, like, when trying to tackle subject matter, that, and as he quotes, we, and I'm assuming he means like Americans, we just painted Indians as fast as we could kill them. So obviously Indians, he's meaning Native Americans here. So from that quote, I was able to learn a little bit about the Met's exhibition titled Artistic Encounters with Indigenous America, because I thought that was such a remarkable saying. Like, I think the first thing that came to my mind, if you've ever seen Parks and Recreation, in like the Pawnee Town Hall, they have that like mural of like the settlers meeting the Pawnee Native Americans. And then it also shows them killing these Native Americans. And while this is a fictional show, this, you know, is something that happened, though. This is what happened in real life all over North America, and South America, let's be real. And, but, you know, if we're focusing specifically on American art, I decided to look into this. So this is from the Met Museum's website, and it's just an exhibition overview. And it states that, as I quote, nostalgia for the vanishing Indian also motivated artists at the turn of the 20th century to look to native cultures, notably in the Southwest, for authentic American subject matter, occurring amid colonization, genocide, dispossession, and cultural destruction. These artistic encounters with Indigenous America reveal little about the realities of Native life. Instead, they reflect the attitudes and anxieties of the artists and societies that produce them. So it kind of deals with like white guilt. And I think that's a whole thing to unpack, but it's like the fact that happened in American history, and we can't forget about it. And we can't forget that when we call something American art, that is something that white people literally took. They took it away, and they killed people over it. And not necessarily like American artists, but I mean the concept of something being an American something. So I think that's what artists struggle with. It's because how do you define who you are and where you live if you don't even feel like there is something to describe it as, if you feel like it's just stolen from someone else, and that opportunity was stolen from someone else, realistically. And so I think that is definitely an example of what, like, I'm trying my best to put it in SXU talk. I hope I'm making sense. But yeah, so I'm going to jump on to another part of the topic in which he states, by the time we became social realists, we knew that American things were not going to lead to a great national art, not only because the themes themselves were hopelessly duplicitous, but because the forms we used to embody them had become hopelessly obsolete. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. So what I think that the speaker is trying to say when these forms are becoming obsolete, that these themes are duplicitous, is that they've already been done in Europe. That these people that are living in America that, you know, are directly from the colonization and the genocide of indigenous people, and completely taking over their land, they're simply just recreating Europe because they are European and they're Eurocentric and these are Western ideas, and that's not profound, that's not groundbreaking, it's not anything different than what's already been made. It's not anything different than from all the other white painters we've studied this semester, you know? So this becomes an issue because how can American art be American art when it's pretty much just recreating European art? So I think that's what he's trying to say with that, and it's the idea of trying to find the national identity when there really isn't one, because the national identity originally was Native Americans, but they were all killed, and all of their art was pretty much destroyed, and while some have survived, none of them are big enough to make it, you know, into a films about paintings class. So what does this say? So it's the fact that these American artists now had to figure something else out, because if their own identity does not even like match with America, the idea of America, because America is an abstract concept, if we're being real, then they have to kind of just take what they have and make that into a new art form. And I think that's why pop art became such a big deal, because pop culture is truly is something that does define different countries around the world. And I think they had to take that and turn it into something else. And we can definitely see that, say, with Andy Warhol. I mean, I doubt that someone taking, like, if we're gonna pretend that, like, David lived in the 20th century, I doubt if he showed up, or wait, no, okay. If David was in the French Revolution and pretend that Campbell's soup existed, for some reason, I doubt that him making a painting of a bunch of Campbell's soup cans would go, like, I doubt people would want to see that. People would be like, why did you make that? What is this? Whereas in America, in like the 1960s, that was a big deal because it defied what other art was before, and it took what America had, which is ultimately consumerism, and turned it into art. So trying to dive a little bit more into this statement without going crazy, I want to focus on like the last part that the speaker stated, and that he said, if one finally had to say what it was that made American art great, it was that American painters took hold of the issue of abstract art with a freedom and they could get from no other subject matter, and finally made high art out of it. So I think we could definitely see this in Andy Warhol. And I just mentioned consumerism, and I just happened to stumble upon an article that mentions Andy Warhol's relationship with consumerism in relation to American art and the American people. So from the article Spotlight on Andy Warhol, Biography, Influence, and Legacy, and it looks like there is no author's name, but this is from the website Invaluable. And so it states that Andy Warhol changed the game for the pop art movement. By combining high art with consumerism in order to bring modern art to the masses, Warhol successfully bridged the gap between gallery spaces and gift shops. And inadvertently, he bridged together America as a community, and making references to something we all knew, like the Campbell's soup can. We can all understand it, and we could say that's an American thing, because that, you know, we didn't see the Campbell's soup can in French art. We didn't see, you know, Monet making an impressionism of like a like a tray of cookies, of like Oreo cookies or something, you know, with the logo and everything. Whereas America can be defined by the things we consume that we all do. And that's really interesting in a capitalist world, that's how we can define America in American art and how we could bring it all together. Because I highly associate pop art with America, and I think a lot of people would. And that's mainly because we had this, you know, huge industrial revolution in the early 20th century, late 19th century, and that's kind of where America was able to pick it up in terms of trying to define itself. So I guess that kind of describes it a little bit more, but it's the fact that the subject matter that had to be chosen could not just be with American history, since it's shorter, significantly shorter than all the other countries in the world that we've studied, which is pretty much just France and Spain and Italy. They had to take from what they had in the now, if that makes sense, and they didn't have the overarching theme of like the what is the word I'm trying to look for? Like the plague. They didn't have the plague. They didn't have as much as a religious war necessarily in the United States. And that's something too, is that the United States never really had a war other than the Civil War. And I guess we can talk about the colonizers, but there was never a war in the United States the way that like World War II pretty much took over all of Europe, right? I hope I'm making sense with that, because I'm trying to make sense of it at the same time. But pretty much I think ultimately what the speaker is saying is that America has a hard time having a national identity and defining itself because it doesn't have a true origin the way in which that, say, people in Europe do, because they stole it from someone else, right? So they kind of had to recreate it out of things that were also created, such as Campbell's soup, right? So that is pretty much what I think that the introduction is trying to explain. Sorry if that was complicated, but pretty much America, what is it? I don't know. It's an abstract idea. And it was stolen land. And that ultimately affects how American artists can define their art and see the origins of their art, or be influenced by, without putting in that European influence of what's going on in Europe right now, such as Cubism with Picasso and things like that. And so that really impacts American art and these artists struggling to find a subject matter that is American, you know? But yeah, that's all I have for today. Thank you for watching, and as always, stay safe, wash your hands, and have a good Easter.